I got engaged to Mitchell, my boyfriend of 2 years, during a quiet weekend at a lakeside cabin. We were both 29. He'd packed a small dinner and proposed just after sunset on the dock with nobody around but a few lazy ducks floating by. It was simple, private, and felt like the exact kind of moment you remember for life. A week later, Mitchell invited me to dinner with his family. He was excited for me to meet everyone, especially his mom, Lorraine. I'd heard about her in bits and pieces. Loved to host, loved tradition, loved her son like he hung the moon. Nothing that sounded too unusual. We arrived at her house, and from the second the door opened, I realized this wouldn't be easy. She looked at my hands first, not my face, then raised her eyebrows at my chipped nail polish. Before I could say a word, she asked if I normally dress this casually for family occasions. Inside, things didn't smooth out. She kept referring to me as Mitchell's little friend. Not fiancé, not partner, just little friend, like I was 12 and tagging along. Mitchell winced the first time, then ignored it. By dessert, she handed me a thick binder titled Lorraine's Bridal Guide. Inside was a full wedding plan, already mapped out. Guest list, venue, menu ideas, even preferred hymns. It included a location I'd never considered and several people I'd never met. When I looked at Mitchell, he just gave a half smile and said she was just being helpful and that she gets excited sometimes. After that dinner, things escalated fast. The next morning, Lorraine texted me a photo of a dress she thought would look better on me than the one I had posted online a week earlier. I hadn't told her anything about my dress yet. She also began calling me at work to run through quick wedding ideas. I told her I was busy, but she'd leave long voicemails about seating charts, floral arrangements, and whether I'd considered switching to her church's pastor. One Tuesday, I came home and found her in our apartment. She'd let herself in with a key Mitchell had given her before we moved in together. She was moving our couch and said she was just helping the space feel more open. I asked Mitchell why she still had a key. He said he hadn't thought to ask for it back. Around this time, she offered to pay for our honeymoon. It sounded generous until Mitchell told me the catch. We had to use the travel agent she trusted, and she would be involved in the process. We said we'd think about it. At a lunch a few days later, she told me I should really consider cutting back to part-time work. After the wedding, because a home runs best when a woman's in it. I said nothing. A week after that, she started pushing hard for a church wedding in her hometown, 4 hours away. Half of my family would have to fly in. She didn't ask. She insisted. Then she reached out to my mom behind my back. I found out because my mom called, confused, asking if I really wanted lavender centerpieces and a unity candle ceremony. She tried to get my mom to team up with her at a family brunch. Mitchell's younger sister caught me near the sink. She leaned in and said, "Don't let her bulldoze you. She thrives on it. You have no idea." That was the moment. Everything locked into place. I didn't argue. I didn't push back. I just started documenting. I saved every text, wrote down every conversation, took note of who was present for what. I wasn't going to scream or cry or demand. I was going to outlast her, not by force, by control, and she'd never see it coming. The day after Lorraine dropped by our apartment uninvited for the second time, I told Mitchell we were hiring a wedding planner. I framed it as a stress saver. He agreed instantly. What he didn't know was that I had already contacted my old college roommate, Hannah. She knew exactly what kind of person Lorraine was. After 5 minutes on the phone, I gave her one specific, never take a live call from Lorraine, straight to voicemail. Every time we had another quiet talk about the honeymoon offer too, we thanked Lorraine, made polite noises, then booked a smaller, simpler trip with our own savings. We left the receipt folded in a drawer and never mentioned it again. When she eventually asked what we decided, Mitchell told her we were still finalizing the detail. From that point on, I started giving her harmless, outdated updates. Told her the cake flavor had been chosen. It hadn't. Said we were looking at a florist. She suggested we weren't. Let her talk in circles while I took notes and kept her 3 steps behind. That week, I noticed something strange. A framed photo on our shelf had shifted. A small vase I kept near the kitchen window was turned around. Mitchell hadn't moved them. I checked the hallway camera feed. Nothing. Because we didn't have one yet. I ordered a cheap doorbell camera that same night, installed it by the weekend. 4 days later, I caught her. She used the old key, walked in mid-afternoon and spent 15 minutes tidying up. When I confronted her about it, calmly, she said she was checking if we needed groceries. I told her we didn't. That led to another long night with Mitchell. He asked me to be patient, but his mom just had a hard time letting go. I told him I wouldn't stop him from seeing her, but she wasn't walking into our apartment again unless I said so. He didn't argue. A week later, Lorraine invited us for dinner. I agreed to go, just to avoid escalation. She cooked something elaborate, like always. It wasn't until I took a bite that I realized she had spiced the dish exactly how I couldn't eat it. Same ingredient I'd told her about before. Mitchell noticed too, especially when I had to excuse myself halfway through. Lorraine acted surprised. Too surprised. After that, I pulled back from family events. Vague excuses, busy with planning, Didn't feel well. But I started meeting up with Mitchell's sister separately. She invited me for coffee. His brother asked me to help pick a birthday gift. The more I spent time with them, the clearer I became. Lorraine wasn't just difficult with me. She was a storm that passed through everyone's lives without me. Present at big dinners, Lorraine flailed. She'd try to take over conversations, but they wouldn't hold. She didn't have a foil anymore. The drama had thinned out. People started noticing. 3 months after the wedding, Lorraine started dropping hints, asking if we were trying yet, mentioning cribs and nursery colors. Every suggestion was wrapped in pretend curiosity. One day, she sent a link to an article titled Top 10 Signs You're Ready for Grandkids. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat Mitchell down. I told him we needed to get certain things in writing: who had access to our home, how joint finances would be handled, and how big decisions were to be made. It wasn't emotional. It was a boundary-setting exercise. Mitchell hesitated, said he agreed in principle, but warned me it would hurt his mom's feelings. I said, then she'll be upset. We drew up the agreements, shared calendar, shared passwords for financial apps, locked up the spare keys app. After that, things began shifting. Lorraine would ask Mitchell about the wedding plans, and he'd just nod vaguely. She started repeating herself, unsure of what she had already been told. She stopped getting real-time updates. For the first time, Mitchell started keeping things from her on purpose. He didn't tell her where we were going for the honeymoon until we had already landed. He didn't tell her when we finalized the guest list or the menu. I didn't yell, I didn't block her, I didn't ban her, but the air around her was changing, and she didn't even know she was already losing ground. That December, Mitchell and I told Lorraine we'd be spending Christmas out of town with friends. What we actually did was stay home in sweatpants, eat leftovers, and watch movies for 2 days straight. It was the first peaceful holiday we had in years. To keep the momentum, I suggested Mitchell start visiting her solo once a month. No pressure, no confrontation, just a gradual shift. He agreed. From that point on, he saw her over coffee or lunch on his way from work. I stayed out of it. She kept sending gifts for me. A chunky cardigan 2 sizes too big, a cookbook titled Being the Heart of Youth Home. Yeah, and a set of kitchen towels that had blessed this mess stitched in glitter thread. I returned all of it unopened. Not with a note, not with an explanation, just a clean message. Returned to sender. I also noticed she'd started referencing deliveries we hadn't even told her about. When a package arrived with my name, she'd text Mitchell about it. I switched our mailing address to a rented box across town. From then on, everything sensitive or personal went there. Then I adjusted the family group chat. I muted it, started a second thread with everyone except Lorraine, and made that the space for actual updates. Birthdays, holiday plans, dinner invites. It all flowed smoother without her noise clogging things. Nobody even questioned it. I met with a lawyer that same month and quietly shifted the deed for our apartment into a trust under my name. Mitchell signed without a pause. Said he didn't want anyone else thinking they had a stake in it, especially someone who once tried to rearrange our furniture while we were at work. Next came the money firewall. I opened a second account, one just for household needs. Groceries, utilities, subscriptions, repairs. I managed it alone. She'd used money as a pressure point before, but now there was nothing for her to track or dangle. Mitchell's siblings noticed the shift. His brother started texting me first about birthdays. His sister dropped by with wine and said, "You actually get things done, not drama." When Lorraine tried to call a family dinner, nobody confirmed. But when I planned a weekend brunch, every seat was filled. Her reputation began to chip away. She told the family she'd picked the venue for our rehearsal dinner. I corrected her gently in front of everyone, said we'd already finalized it before her suggest. I didn't even raise my voice. She brought up the baby question again, too, asked if we were starting soon or just delaying for now. I told her plainly that children weren't a current plan and we didn't need advice on the matter. She pouted. Mitchell didn't add anything. That silence said more than any argument ever could. Then she showed up at our apartment again, uninvited. I watched her ring the doorbell from the camera feed, then walk to the window and peer in like she was checking for signs of life. I didn't open the door. Mitchell didn't either. She called him. He picked up and told her, "You can't just do that anymore." That moment stayed with him. A few nights later, he asked me to come with him to his cousin's BBQ. Halfway through the event, he leaned over and said, "This is what calm feels like." The weeks following our quiet Christmas were a strange mix of calm and tension, like standing on a still lake knowing the ice beneath might crack at any moment. Lorraine seemed to sense that something had shifted, but she couldn't quite name it, couldn't put her finger on why the old patterns weren't working anymore. She kept trying, though. Her efforts became more inventive, less about open interference and more about threading herself into places where we wouldn't expect her. She sent handwritten notes to my work, as if a personal touch would soften the message. Each one was a carefully crafted suggestion disguised as a compliment. "I know how busy you must be with wedding planning and your job," one read. "But if you ever want help organizing the guest list, I have a system that worked wonders for my friends' daughters." Another came a few days later. I saw the sweetest set of nursery curtains. Don't worry, I'm not pushing, just keeping an eye out for the future. The handwriting itself felt invasive, like she was reaching across a boundary I hadn't invited her to cross. I didn't reply. Instead, I folded each note and slipped it into the same folder where I kept the printed voicemails, the screenshots of texts, the timeline I'd started building from the moment I decided to outlast her. Meanwhile, Mitchell seemed caught between relief that the holidays had been peaceful and confusion at why his mother still hovered so close despite our polite distance. I didn't push him. I let him come to his own conclusions. But I watched him begin to see. It was small things at first. He noticed how she'd phrase things to him that didn't match what she'd sent to me. He spotted the way she'd imply she was helping, when really she was undermining decisions we'd made. At dinner with friends, he excused himself to take a call, and when he came back, he said quietly, "She was just checking if we'd confirmed the caterer yet. I didn't tell her we were even at that stage." There was a weariness in his voice, a recognition that this wasn't normal, that his mother's interest wasn't simple affection. I kept my tone light, but my resolve hardened. I suggested we use a wedding email account, one only we and the planner would access, so nothing could leak. Mitchell agreed, even helped set it up that night. The planner, Hannah, kept Lorraine at arm's length with effortless grace. Whenever Lorraine tried to reach out directly, threw a suggestion past to Mitchell, a forwarded vendor contact, an offer to pop by to discuss color palettes, Hannah redirected or delayed. She was my buffer, and I was grateful. But Lorraine's persistence didn't stop. She began to show up at places she knew we'd be. The grocery store near our apartment, where she'd act surprised to bump into us. The coffee shop where Mitchell liked to stop on Saturday mornings. Each time she'd make it seem like coincidence, but the frequency was too great to ignore. I started varying our routines, choosing different stores, different times, and Mitchell began to see the pattern too. He stopped brushing it off as luck. One afternoon, she texted him a photo of an apartment listing in our neighborhood with a note saying, "This would be such a convenient place for me to visit you both. Just thinking ahead." That was the moment Mitchell sat down at the kitchen table, ran a hand through his hair and said, "Okay, I see it now." There was no anger in his voice, just a quiet understanding that things needed to change further. Together, we drafted a message to Lorraine explaining, kindly but firmly, that we loved her, but we needed space to plan the wedding and settle into our life without constant input. We thanked her for her care, but said we'd reach out when we needed help. She didn't reply immediately. When she did, it was a long message about how she only wanted the best for us, how she didn't mean to intrude, how she was hurt we saw it that way. But she didn't argue the facts. And for the first time, she didn't offer a new suggestion or plan. I knew then that we'd reached the next stage. Not the end, not yet, but the part where she realized we weren't as easy to steer as she'd thought. And I felt the weight of that, but I also felt lighter, like the lake's ice might hold after all. In the months that followed, the quiet felt almost unnatural, like Lorraine was holding her breath and waiting for the right moment to step back in. There were no more surprise visits, no more chance encounters at the store, no more thinly veiled offers to help. But her absence didn't bring peace. It brought a different kind of vigilance, like we were waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mitchell threw himself into the last details of the wedding planning with Hannah. He started taking real joy in it, choosing things because they made us happy, not because he thought they'd please his mother. He picked the band, tasted cake samples with me, even debated the merits of round versus long tables at the reception like it was a serious philosophical question. And with every choice, I saw him shed a little more of the guilt he'd been carrying. But Lorraine hadn't disappeared. She had simply changed tactics. It started small again, a comment on a social media post, praising a vendor she hoped we'd consider, though we'd already chosen someone else. A forwarded email about an amazing photographer she knew personally. A card mailed to my mother, thanking her for all the work I know you're doing behind the scenes. My mother, confused, called me. I assured her there was nothing to worry about. Lorraine was trying to find new doors in because we'd locked the old ones. Mitchell noticed too. "It's like she can't stand not being at the center of it," he said one night, after his sister texted him to ask why their mom was claiming to be planning our rehearsal dinner. We hadn't even decided on a location yet. That was when I suggested we finalize as many details as possible quietly and keep them private until they were set in stone. We chose the rehearsal dinner spot, signed the contract, paid the deposit. Then, when Lorraine tried to float her ideas at the next family gathering, we calmly told her it was already booked. She blinked, surprised, but didn't argue. I saw the frustration simmer behind her polite smile. Mitchell's siblings, for their part, began siding with us openly. His sister started coming over to help me with little tasks, addressing invitations, assembling favors. His brother offered to coordinate airport pickups for out-of-town guests. They didn't say it outright, but I could tell they were relieved someone was finally standing firm against the storm that was their mother. And still, Lorraine tried to regain ground. One afternoon, a package arrived at our apartment, addressed to Mitchell. Inside was a delicate lace handkerchief, The kind you might tuck into a wedding dress, with a note. Something old, from my wedding day, so you'll always have a piece of family with you. I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't the gift itself, it was the way she framed it, as if the only family that counted was hers. Mitchell hesitated, then quietly placed the handkerchief back in its box and set it on a shelf. We didn't discuss it again. The final straw came when she called Mitchell in tears one evening, saying she felt pushed out, abandoned, as if she'd lost her son. She said she didn't recognize the man he was becoming, that marriage was supposed to bring families together, not drive them apart. Mitchell listened, quiet, patient, but when he hung up, he didn't look torn the way he once might have. Instead, he looked resolved. "She's not crying because she's hurt," he said. "She's crying because she's losing control." And for the first time, I saw him as not just my partner in this, but as someone who was ready to lead the charge. We wrote Lorraine together that night, a kind, clear message that we were grateful for her love and support, but we needed her to trust us to make our own choices. We told her the wedding was planned, the details were set, and what we needed most from her now was to show up as a guest and enjoy the day. No more planning, no more suggestions, no more interference. We hit send together, and then we waited to see what would come next. The days after we sent that message felt both tense and strangely quiet, as if Lorraine was weighing her next move or perhaps finally realizing that the landscape had shifted for good. Mitchell and I didn't talk much about it at first. We both knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. The wedding was close now, just weeks away, and instead of dwelling on what Lorraine might do, we focused on what we could control. Invitations had long since gone out, the RSVPs tallied, the vendors confirmed. I noticed that Mitchell seemed lighter somehow. He laughed more easily, teased me about my obsession with seating charts, even started practicing his first dance steps in the kitchen late at night. His sister stopped by often, bringing small gifts like a bottle of wine or a set of place cards she'd hand-lettered herself, little gestures that reminded me we weren't alone in this. But Lorraine wasn't done. The quiet was her preparation, not her surrender. About 10 days before the wedding, Mitchell got a call from a relative in his mother's hometown, asking if they could still get a hotel room. Confused, Mitchell asked why they thought they'd need one there when the wedding was hours away. That's when the truth spilled out. Lorraine had been telling certain family members that the ceremony location had changed, that we'd decided at the last minute to honor tradition and hold it in her church after all. I felt a cold flush wash over me when Mitchell relayed this. It wasn't just meddling anymore, it was sabotage. But Mitchell surprised me. He didn't panic, didn't even raise his voice. He called each of those relatives personally, calmly explaining the truth, giving them the correct details, and assuring them that Lorraine had been mistaken. Then he sat down and drafted another message to his mother, this one shorter, firmer. He told her that spreading false information was unacceptable, that if she truly wanted to be part of our lives, she needed to stop undermining our choices. He told her that if there was one more incident, we would reconsider her place at the wedding entirely. And he sent it without hesitation. That night, we lay in bed in the dark, listening to the city hum outside our window, and for the first time, I heard him say, quietly but clearly, "I'm done apologizing for her." The week that followed was, remarkably, peaceful. Lorraine didn't call, she didn't text. There were no surprise deliveries, no mysterious changes to the guest list or seating plan. The rehearsal dinner came and went smoothly, filled with laughter and easy conversation. Mitchell's family rallied around us, his siblings, cousins, even some of the older relatives who had once been firmly in Lorraine's camp. They thanked us for including them, for making the day about love and joy rather than drama. And when the wedding day finally arrived, bright and clear, it felt like stepping into the life we'd been building all along. Lorraine came, of course. She arrived on time, dressed elegantly, and for once she didn't try to steal the spotlight. She sat where she was asked, she smiled for photos, and she didn't speak out of turn. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I think she realized at last that she was no longer at the center of things, and that the more she had tried to cling to control, the more she had lost it. Mitchell and I danced under the string lights that evening, surrounded by people who truly cared for us, and when I caught Lorraine watching from the edge of the crowd, I didn't feel anger or triumph, just relief. We had made it, together. Married life brought a sense of calm that neither of us had quite expected, like exhaling after holding our breath for too long. The wedding had been a line in the sand, and on the other side of it, we found a quiet that felt earned. We settled into our routines, small moments that meant everything. Grocery runs together on Saturday mornings, lazy Sundays with coffee and crossword puzzles, impromptu dinners with Mitchell's sister or his brother dropping by to share a bottle of wine. Lorraine for a time kept her distance, and in that space we began to see more clearly how much of our early engagement had been shaped by her chaos. But the peace wasn't permanent. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, she began to creep back in. It started with small things, an email here, a forwarded article about the importance of family traditions, a card for our first anniversary that included a pointed note about how she hoped we'd consider starting a family soon. Mitchell and I handled these moments together, a united front, responding only when necessary, always kind, but firm. And for a while, that was enough. But then came the day we announced we were moving. We'd found a new place, a home that truly felt like ours, a little farther from the city, with space to grow, not because of any pressure, but because it felt right. Lorraine's reaction was immediate and intense. She called Mitchell, voice tight with forced cheer, asking if the new house had room for a nursery. She emailed me links to furniture sales and home decor, suggestions. She even tried to involve herself in the negotiations, asking for details about the price, the seller, the timeline, as if she had a seat at the table. We didn't give her one. Mitchell told her gently but firmly that the details were private, that we would share what we wanted when we were ready. And that, I think, was when she realized she'd lost the last bit of influence she'd been clinging to. Her messages became fewer, shorter, more tentative. The grand gestures stopped. She didn't show up uninvited. She didn't try to take over. But what took their place was something harder to define. A quiet, simmering resentment that hung around the edges of every interaction. When we did see her, at holidays or family birthdays, she was polite, even warm on the surface, but the warmth felt brittle, like it could crack at any second. I saw it in the way she looked at our new house, smiling, but with eyes that scanned every corner as if searching for a foothold. I saw it in the way she listened when Mitchell talked about his work, nodding but not really hearing. And I saw it most clearly the day she came to visit and brought with her a housewarming gift. A framed photo of Mitchell as a boy, standing with her in front of their old house. A reminder of where he came from, of the life she believed she had shaped. We thanked her, of course, but when she left, Mitchell set the frame on a shelf in the guest room, out of sight, and we didn't speak of it again. In those quiet moments, I understood that the battle wasn't over. It had simply changed shape. And as we settled into our new home with its sunlit rooms and quiet evenings, I felt ready. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to protect what we had built. Ready to write the final chapter on our terms. The months that followed felt like the final act of a long, quiet play where everyone knows their role. But the tension hums beneath the surface. Lorraine's presence in our lives became more like background noise, a low murmur that neither of us let take center stage anymore. She still tried in small ways to insert herself, a comment here, a suggestion there, always wrapped in civility, always just this side of overstepping. But by then, we had learned how to diffuse her without drama. The new house became our sanctuary, a place where Mitchell and I built rhythms that belonged to us alone. We hosted small dinners with friends, spent slow mornings on the back porch, planted a tiny garden that thrived despite our inexperience. Mitchell's sister came often, helping me with the tomatoes, bringing over fresh herbs, laughing at how seriously we took our compost bin. His brother stopped by with his kids, their voices filling the yard with the kind of joy that felt real, unforced. Lorraine noticed, of course. She noticed that life had moved on without her as the axis, that gatherings happened without her orchestration, that decisions were made without her consultation. I think the realization weighed on her, but there was no grand confrontation, no final outburst. Just a slow fading, like a storm that had lost its strength and drifted out to sea. The last turning point came the day Mitchell and I sat down with his siblings and quietly shared our plans to move abroad for a year. Something we dreamed of but hadn't spoken aloud until now. Work would allow it, the timing felt right, and more than anything, it felt like the final step in claiming our lives as our own. When Lorraine found out, she called, voice trembling not with anger but with something closer to defeat. She asked why we hadn't consulted her, as if even now she might still have a say. Mitchell told her gently, because this is our choice, and we don't need permission. That was the last real conversation we had before we left. We packed our lives into boxes, stored what we couldn't take, and boarded a plane with nothing but each other and the promise of what lay ahead. And in the quiet of that first night in a new city, in a small apartment that smelled of fresh paint and possibility, Mitchell turned to me and said, "This is what peace feels like." And it was. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of freedom, of boundaries respected, of a life built intentionally and together. Lorraine remained a part of our history, a shadow that had shaped us, but no longer one that defined us. And as we stood on that balcony, watching the lights of our new home flicker below, I knew we had finally, truly, closed the chapter. No more battles to fight, no more ground to win, just us, and the future we chose, at last entirely our own.